Make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
I'm Kirk Schneider, and I'm a psychologist in San Francisco. I have a private practice. I write part-time. I've written 8 books, or co-written, and I am an editor of I am the editor of the Journal of Humanistic Psychology. And I've been loving and playing and working in this field of humanistic psychology for some 30 years. And I also very much appreciate exploring big questions about life. Two major points. One is about presence and the other is about awe. And I see both presence and awe as precursors or preconditions for developing empathy. And by that I mean, let's take presence first. I think it's really important to create a ground for deeply understanding another through creating an atmosphere of presence. And by presence, I mean holding and illuminating that which is salient, that which is charged and alive between, let's say, the therapist or the facilitator and the client. It's very much a kind of a field that can be co-created, and that really begins as soon as contact is made between two people. Let's not even put it in the realm of therapy, between two people. But I think if one has a sense of presence, they bring a very fertile ground for, as I say, holding and illuminating the alive themes between the person and within the person that they're with. So by holding, I mean creating a sense of safety, of containment. Having a sense, maybe you've had this sense with a very helpful witness, that there's a kind of solidity about them. They're kind of rock solid, and they're there for you. There's a strength and a sense that you'll be okay, whatever you reveal with this person.
Well, I try to bring that sense of presence to the interview as well.
Yes,
so
yes.
I hope that's coming across, because that's one of my goals or intentions. And
good.
So
that's beginning to.
Yeah, okay. And does that come across, or is that do you? Oh, I guess it's actually kind of an exploration of presence. Like,
yeah.
Well, what is presence? How does it work? Have you learned? What have you learned about presence?
Well, personally, it was very important in my own healing process because of the helpful witness that I had at a very painful, a very difficult time in my own life, especially early in my life. And what this person's presence brought for me was an ability to stay with the really ugly, scary, and just harrowing parts of myself that were coming up at the time. So a lot of it had to do with staying with, creating an atmosphere where I could stay with it, I could continue attending to those places, and be with those places, not just in an intellectual way, but with my whole body, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Could you recount the story, or would that, what actually happened?
I'd rather not go into too much detail about it, except to say that it began with a death in the family, my own family, when I was at a very young age. It was the death of my brother, actually, and all the upheaval and the disarray that threw me into and my family. And without going into too much detail, my parents were very wise, though very challenged through this process, but wise to refer me actually to a therapist, an analyst, psychoanalyst, when I was 6 years old. And that person was key to, I think, in a way, saving my life. So I was in pretty bad shape. And through his presence, I was able to gradually come around from feeling terrorized by the uncertainties around me to actually becoming more intrigued, more able to explore and ask questions about my life, about life itself. So it wasn't just a shutting down, it was an opening in some ways. Because of that person's presence, and I was going to say presence as a kind of a prelude to empathy, by his very close attention to my turmoil. He was able to connect, I believe, with parts of himself that deeply related to what I was going through. And I sensed that powerfully. That was a part of his rock-like presence. So I sensed this is a guy who's not only sitting and listening to me and clearing a space, but is in some way really there with me, can relate to me. And he didn't have to say a word. I mean, I barely remember a word that he said. This is all through sensing. I was going to say before about that sense of awe. I think a sense of awe or a kind of humility and wonder toward living can come out of that presence also. And people who exude that presence, I think, often have a sense of awe toward living, because awe doesn't mean just all sweetness and light. It means being able to be fully present. It starts with presence. Fully present to one's greatest fears, anxieties, discomforts. And through that, one's greatest desires and dreams and highs. So it's a feeling that one can embrace the fuller ranges of one's experience of living. And that's what these helpful witnesses bring with their presence as a ground for then being able to relate empathically to others. They bring that sense of freedom. And one usually doesn't experience that right away. I mean, it took me a very long time to get to that place that this man was offering, in a broader sense, to get to that place of feeling freer to experience the range of my thoughts and feelings and imaginings. But my point is, he was bringing all of that to his contact with me. And I had a later therapist when I had another major struggle in my life that was partly related to this early struggle, who exuded the same kinds of qualities, brought that presence and that sense of, I think, awe, wonder about living to contact.